establishment of a new settlement outpost near a Palestinian village in the West Bank was met with a protest.
The supposedly peaceful protest descended in violence as the Israeli army clashed with the demonstrators. More details on this later in the news. Good evening, I'm CJ Hero.
And I'm Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. And now for the headlines.
During a personal visit, President Marcos instructs officials to maximize government assets and help those affected by the devastating earthquake in Abra. President Marcos expected to announce the government's position on the resumption of the ICC drug war probe after convening his legal team. Amid various issues concerning their countries, U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping set to hold talks. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken to speak with Russian counterpart to discuss prisoner swap. And U.S. Federal Reserve hikes interest rates by 0.75% point.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has personally visited areas hardly hit by the powerful magnitude 7 earthquake in Abra. He instructed government agencies to coordinate with local government units for quicker rescue and relief response. Eden Santos has the details.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. flew to earthquake-hit Abra this morning to personally supervise search and rescue efforts as well as relief operations in the area. Marcos presided over the situation briefing in Camp Juan Villamor in Bangued with House Speaker Martin Romualdez, Special Assistant to the President Antonio Lagdameo Jr., Interior and Local Government Secretary Benhur Abalos, Senator Amy Marcos, and other members of the cabinet, along with local executives. During the briefing, the President said that government assets should be maximized to streamline the operations.
National government agencies, lahat ng gagawin ninyo, please coordinate closely with the local government para ma-maximize ang inyong mga asset. Hindi kayo nag-uulit, hindi kayo nagkukulang. You have a plan, you plan everything together. You listen to the local governments because tiga rito rin naman kayo. But you listen to the local governments kasi sila they are the ones who have the fundamental responsibility to bring this aid to our people.
Officials from Abra Electric Cooperatives or Abreco informed the President that they have restored 95% of the power supply in the province. The President then directed concerned agencies to ensure sufficient water supply and financial assistance to those who evacuated due to the damage quake brought to their houses. According to the Department of Social Welfare and Development, 28 houses in Abra were totally damaged and 2,362 were partially damaged, but these numbers are expected to increase further. FIBOC's Director Renato Solidum said inspection on houses and other structures could start now. A recommendation from the Department of Public Works and Highways and engineers would be needed before residents can return to their houses.
Yusek Solidum, are we allowing them already? Are we allowing them already to go back into their homes, to at least the engineers, to inspect if they are safe? Is it already safe for people to, at least hindi pa muna yung resident, kundi yung mga mag-inspeksyon, to declare safe the
Yes po. Kung declared talagang structurally safe po yung mga building, pwede na. but people should be ready how to respond properly during aftershocks. Kasi malakas pa po ang posibleng aftershock, and just to brief po ang mga local government units, we expect aftershocks to continue for several weeks, pero the first 3 days po ang marami, and hopefully, pababa na siya.
For example, the hospital, when ayaw pa nilang pumasok ngayon because it's still, it might still be unsafe and baka magka-aftershock.
Solidum also reminded the local chief executives that aftershocks will continue for several weeks, but they are hoping that this will subside in the coming days. In the past 24 hours, as of 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the PHIVOLCS have recorded 800 aftershocks in northern Luzon. Eden Santos reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Provincial Council of Abra has passed a resolution placing the province under a state of calamity. The resolution, approved by Abra Governor Dominic Valera, cited that 80% of the population were affected, while private and government properties were severely damaged by the quake. Abra was the epicenter of a powerful 7-magnitude earthquake that rippled across northern Luzon. Under a state of calamity, local officials are allowed to control the prices of basic goods and tap calamity funds. Affected residents can also apply for interest-free government loans. In a separate advisory, the Disaster Management Council extended the suspension of government work and classes throughout the province until Friday, July 29.
The devastating quake that hit Abra and other northern Luzon provinces has damaged 34 million pesos worth of infrastructure. The National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council said damage assessment is still ongoing. 17 roads in Cordillera Administrative Region are still not passable due to landslides and rock falls. 12,945 individuals, or more than 3,000 families, were affected by the earthquake, with 541 families staying in evacuation centers. Fatalities remain at 5, while 131 are reported injured in Regions 1, 2, and Car. A total of 857 houses and 17 buildings were damaged. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has extended the tenure of officers in charge at executive agencies without a permanent head. Press Secretary Trixie Cruz Angeles said Executive Secretary Victor Rodriguez issued Memorandum Circular Number 3, signed July 27, to amend MC1, which declared certain positions vacant to give way to new appointees. MC1 also designated OICs in government agencies where President Marcos has yet to appoint a permanent head. With a new memorandum circular, the OICs will serve until December 31st or until a replacement has been appointed. Among the affected agencies were the Department of Health and the Department of National Defense. President Marcos chose Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere as the DOH OIC, while former Armed Forces Chief of Staff Jose Faustino Jr. was appointed DND's OIC and Undersecretary due to the one-year ban on appointments of retired military officers. The newly signed MC3 does not cover government-owned and controlled corporations, government instrumentalities with corporate powers, government corporate entities, and government financial institutions.
The Marcos administration is expected to make public its stand on the International Criminal Court, or ICC, probe into the war on drugs launched by the previous administration. In a Facebook post, former presidential spokesman Harry Roque said President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. had convened his legal advisors to tackle the ICC drug war probe. Present in the photo with the president and Roque are Justice Secretary Jesus Crispin Remulla, Solicitor General Menardo Guevara, Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique Manalo, Chief Presidential Legal Counsel Juan Ponce Enrile, Executive Secretary Victor Rodriguez, and the Chief of the DFA Legal Affairs Office, Assistant Secretary Domingo Nolasco. Roque, an international law expert and an ICC-accredited lawyer, was tapped by the president as private counsel. Solicitor General Menardo Guevara confirmed that ICC was the only issue discussed during the meeting. But Guevara refused to give further details and advised people to wait for the president's announcement regarding the country's position. The probe was suspended in November upon the request of the Philippine government, but the ICC prosecutor in June requested a resumption following reports that the country has not investigated or is not investigating crimes within the jurisdiction of the ICC.
The Philippine Department of Health has recorded 890 new cases of Omicron subvariant BA.5. According to Health Undersecretary Beverly Ho, based on genome sequencing results covering July 22 to 26, 18 additional Omicron BA.4 subvariant cases were also detected. 15 Omicron subvariant BA.2.12.1 cases were logged as well. According to Ho, these additional 890 Omicron subvariant BA.5 cases were found in all regions of the country except for Region 12 and the Bangsamoro region. Of these, 232 were from Metro Manila, 252 from Western Visayas, and 136 from Calabarzon. 63 were from Cordillera Administrative Region, 59 from Cagayan Valley, 46 from Central Luzon, and 37 were from Mamaropa or Mimaropa. Eastern Visayas, Northern Mindanao, Davao Region, and Caraga each logged one additional case. With this, the total number of BA.5 cases in the country has risen to 1,997.
Congress leaders expressed their support in aiding the earthquake-hit provinces of northern Luzon. What's included in the assistance package? Well, we will hear it from Vic Sumintak.
Congress is willing to pass a supplemental budget to augment the government's Calamity Fund and better assist residents hit by a powerful earthquake in northern Luzon. In a statement, House Deputy Speaker Ralph Recto said the National Disaster Risk and Reduction Management Council has only 12.8 billion pesos in Calamity Fund. The amount is not enough to support the relief and rehabilitation efforts in areas damaged by the tremor, since the government also needs to prepare for other calamities that may come. For his part, House Speaker Martin Romualdez vowed that Congress will also support the restoration efforts involving damaged heritage and cultural sites. During the situation briefing presided by President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. in Abra this morning, Senator Amy Marcos appealed for funding the rehabilitations of the sites, which includes the Bantay Bell Tower and heritage houses in Vigan.
As a mother of four, their safety is my utmost priority. But now, as the mother of the entire province of Abra, of all more than 250,000 residents, I am grieving for the possible lasting effects of this to their security. We need to look beyond this disaster. We are a mountainous province with the mighty Abra River twisting our terrain. We may not be able to predict when an earthquake occurs.
Meanwhile, Representatives Ching Bernos of Abra and Eric Yap of Benguet both appealed for the national government's assistance for their constituents affected by the powerful quake. In a privileged speech, Bernos asked President Marcos to help her province during these challenging times. Yap, on the other hand, said the local government units have been coordinating with the Department of Public Works and Highways for the clearing operations on areas affected by landslides. The lawmaker added that Benguet needs aid from the national government since most of its towns are classified as fifth-class municipalities with a little share in the Internal Revenue Allotment or IRA Fund.
Alam niyo ang problema po, kawawa po kasi ang Benguet dahil napakaliit po ng budget ng Kapitolyo namin. Kaya nga kung every time nag-uusap kami ni Governor Diclas, ang lagi niya sinasabi, ang budget po ng Benguet ay 1.8 billion. Kasama na dito ang pasweldo sa lahat ng empleyado ng Kapitolyo. Kasama na dito ang pagpapatakbo sa provincial hospital. Kaya nga po ang construction development lang ng aming probinsya halos sa 500 million lang po per year. Kaya nga ang role ng DPWH ay napakalaki po ng naitulong.
The lawmakers are both confident that their provinces can overcome the damage brought by the earthquake. Vic Somintak reporting for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Coming up, Ukraine grain exports expected to resume soon. And amid monkeypox surge, WHO does not recommend mass vaccination at this time. Mata ng Agila will return with more stories when we return.
Maligayang anibersaryo sa mga kapatid ng Iglesia ni Cristo, 10 ng pamunuan nito sa pangungunan ng Executive Minister kapatid na Eduardo Manalo. Sana po ang katuruang mula sa banal na aklat na ibinabahagi ng Iglesia sa mga kapatid ay maging ilaw na magbibigay liwanag sa kanilang pagtak sa daan ng buhay araw-araw. At sana ay lumawak pa ang impluensyang espiritual ng Iglesia ni Cristo sa sandaigdigan. Happy 108th Anniversary! Ako po si Salvador Sal Panelo.
This portion is
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese leader Xi Jinping are set to hold talks amid tensions in Taiwan and Russia's military operation in Ukraine. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby confirms that the call would take place in coming days, adding that the bilateral talks will include potential areas of cooperation between the U.S. and China. Kirby points out that Biden wants to ensure the lines of communication with Xi remain open because they need to. The White House also seeks to downplay an emerging area of bilateral tensions, such as the widely reported possible visit of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan. Kirby says the conflict in Europe and the increasing military activity around Taiwan are expected to be the highlights of the phone conversation. But he is also quick to dismiss Beijing's latest threats against Washington, saying they were much ado about a trip that is not even official yet.
Well, let me just
A Ukrainian presidential advisor says Russian forces have taken over Ukraine's second biggest power plant and are conducting a massive redeployment of troops to 3 southern regions. Russian-backed forces captured intact the Soviet-era coal-fired Volehirska power plant in what is Moscow's first significant gain in more than 3 weeks. Oleksiy Arestovich, an advisor to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, confirmed the capture of the plant in the eastern Donetsk region, but stressed it was only a tiny tactical advantage for Russia. Arestovich added that the Russian redeployment to the south appeared to be a switch from offense to strategic defense, with troops sent to the Melitopol, Zaporizhia, and Kherson regions. He also said Ukraine's operation to liberate Kherson has already begun after striking the Antonivsky Bridge, a key Russian supply route, on Wednesday. But Russian officials said that their forces would use other ways to cross areas with damaged bridges, including the use of pontoon bridges and ferries to liberate Ukraine. Grain exports from war-torn Ukraine are set to resume shortly. A joint coordination center for the exports has opened in Skopje. The center will oversee the shipments and ensure grain and other food products can be safely transported. The center has 5 representatives from Ukraine, Russia, and the United Nations. It will register and track the merchant ships. UN Representative Fred Kenny says the top priority is keeping everyone safe.
Certainly, the primary consideration in this initiative is to ensure the safety and safe navigation of merchant vessels. So, of course, all of those considerations will be taken into account.
Good medical news from the White House. U.S. President Joe Biden says he has tested negative for COVID-19 and no longer needs to isolate. Biden completed a course of Paxlovid therapy after testing positive for the virus last Thursday. He credits vaccines for his quick recovery. Biden was fully vaccinated and had 2 boosters. He says that's why his recovery was quicker than former President Donald Trump's.
Here's the bottom line. When my predecessor got COVID, he had to get helicoptered to Walter Reed Medical Center. He was severely ill. Thankfully, he recovered. When I got COVID, I worked from upstairs of the White House, and the office is upstairs, and for that 5-day period. The difference is vaccinations, of course.
Near Wuhan, China, almost 1 million people have been placed under a 3-day lockdown after 4 asymptomatic COVID cases were detected. China follows a zero-COVID strategy, including mass testing, strict isolation rules, and local lockdowns. Though this has resulted in far fewer deaths than in many other countries, the strategy is facing growing opposition as people and businesses continue to battle the strain of restrictions. In Wuhan, a city of 12 million people, regular testing uncovered 2 asymptomatic cases 2 days ago. 2 more cases were found through contact tracing, and shortly after the lockdown order was issued. Wuhan City became known around the world in early 2020 as the first place scientists detected the new coronavirus. It is also the first city to be put under harsh restrictive measures.
At a press conference in Geneva, WHO Director General Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus says at this time, mass vaccinations against monkeypox are not recommended. The WHO chief, however, recommends target vaccination.
Asking questions when we come to that. WHO recommends target vaccination for those exposed to someone with monkeypox, and for those at high risk of exposure, including health workers, some lab workers, and those with multiple sexual partners. At this time, we don't recommend mass vaccination against monkeypox.
The people who are most at risk.
Dr. Rosamond Lewis, WHO's technical lead for monkeypox, reiterates who is most at risk of contracting the disease.
So at the moment, the people who are most at risk at this time are men who have sex with men in most countries in the world, not all countries, which is why it's also very important to pay attention to what's happening in your local region, in your city, in your country, in your area.
In the queue for asking questions when we come to that. With this, I give the floor to
Palestinians and Israeli solidarity activists protest against the establishment of a new settlement outpost near the village of Hares, northwest of Salfit. Protesters raised the Palestinian flag and chant slogans on a street near the settlements of Barkan and Ariel.
واحنا اليوم بدنا نروح على نعمل احتجاج هناك، ما نعينا نعمل احتجاج لانه هذا المستوطنين بدهم يستولوا عليها بالقوه، واذا استولوا عليها اغلب الاراضي اللي للبلد رايحه تروح، واحنا معنا الاوراق القانونيه، قدمنا شكوى في شرطه الفلسطينيه واليوم حولوها على شرطه اريال، قدمنا كل الاوراق الرسميه في الارض.
Owners of the land claim that despite having the legal papers and filing a complaint with the Palestinian police, the settlers still want to seize their land by force. Authorities, on the other hand, have transferred the responsibility of settling the issue to the Israeli police.
على شارع عابر الصايمرة أكبر الشوارع.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov condemns Western threats vis-a-vis Russia and anybody who dares to support Russia during a visit to Addis Ababa as part of his African tour.
What we witness now, especially as the West launches unprecedented campaign of sanctions, accusations, threats vis-a-vis Russia and anybody who dares to support Russia or even not to condemn Russia. This campaign indicates that we are living through a very important historical period. Is it our choice to have the world where we have so-called collective West totally united under the United States, totally subordinated to the United States, and feeling free, feeling that it has the right to decide when and how to promote its own interests, without following international law, without any respect to the sovereign equality of states.
Lavrov also said that the situation in Ukraine did negatively affect food markets, but not because of Russia's special operation. Rather, it was due to the inadequate action of the West, which announced sanctions that undermined the availability of food on the markets. Meanwhile, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni defended his country's relationship with Russia. At a joint press conference, the veteran leader threw a question at the press asking, how can we be against somebody who has never harmed us? Museveni also hailed Russia for backing anti-colonial movements in Africa. Museveni said Kampala would cooperate with Moscow in a range of fields including space, energy, agriculture, and vaccines. As relations with the West have collapsed over the conflict, Lavrov said Africa would play a greater role in Russia's foreign policy.
Allies were also under arms embargo.
Uganda was one of 17 African nations to abstain during a vote in March on a UN resolution that overwhelmingly condemned the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Up next, Donald Trump threatens to sue CNN and other outlets for dismissing his voter fraud claims. A looming shortage of peanut paste threatens more malnutrition in Kenya. And dozens of penguins wash up dead on the coast of Uruguay. These and more stories when Mata ng Agila International returns.
This portion is brought to you by Source Alliance.
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. Former U.S. President Donald Trump is now threatening to sue CNN for calling his debunked voter fraud claims baseless. Trump released a statement saying he has informed the media giant that he intends to file a lawsuit against the network, alleging repeated defamatory statements against him. The former leader also wrote he will be commencing actions against the other media outlets that have defamed him and defrauded the public regarding the overwhelming evidence of fraud throughout the 2020 election. He vowed that he will never stop fighting for the truth and for the future of the United States. Trump's statement came close to a week after his legal team sent a letter to CNN's leadership on July 21, asking for the retraction of numerous articles and televised transmissions within 10 days. Trump's legal team asserted that the former president's remarks shouldn't be considered lies, as he subjectively believes that the results of the 2020 presidential election turned on fraudulent voting activity in several key states. The legal team further disputed that CNN has refused to acknowledge that Trump could be right. CNN representatives did not immediately respond to a request for comments from the Insider News.
According to an investigation by the U.S. House Committee on Oversight and Reform, major gun manufacturers have made over $1 billion in the last decade selling military-style weapons. A memo from the panel outlines manufacturers' revenue and marketing strategies for assault-style weapons, focusing on the gun brands used in recent mass shootings. The release came ahead of a hearing on the role of the firearm industry in the pervasive gun violence in the U.S. At the said hearing, gun manufacturer CEOs shot back and called the shootings local problems that have to be solved locally. They also defended firearms as inanimate objects. Sturm Ruger CEO Christopher Killoy and Daniel Defense CEO Marty Daniel testified at the hearing. Committee Chair Representative Carolyn Maloney said they will issue subpoenas to Smith & Wesson and other manufacturers. Gun makers' products used in recent mass shooting deaths were also noted. For example, a Daniel Defense weapon was used to kill 19 children and 2 teachers at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. The brands do not track deaths, injuries, or crimes that involve their weapons, arguing that it does not have the means to do so. The brand said they learn of incidents through their customer service department, the media, or from occasional lawsuits. The hearing comes just after California Governor Gavin Newsom recently signed a law allowing citizens affected by gun violence to sue manufacturers. House Democrats are pushing to vote on an assault weapons ban later this week.
Hundreds of supporters of powerful Iraqi cleric Muqtada Sadir danced and sang in parliament after storming Baghdad's Green Zone in protest at a rival bloc's nomination for prime minister. Police fired barrages of tear gas in a bid to stop the protesters from breaching the gates of the heavily fortified Green Zone, but the crowd surged forward and entered parliament. The protests are the latest challenge for oil-rich Iraq, which remains mired in a political and socio-economic crisis despite soaring global energy prices. Crowds wandered around the parliament building waving national flags, taking photographs, chanting and cheering. Prime Minister Mustafa Al-Kadhimi called on the protesters to immediately withdraw, warning that the security forces would ensure the protection of state institutions and foreign missions and prevent any harm to security and order. However, it took orders issued by the Shiite leader Sadir before the crowds of protesters started leaving. Sadir wrote on Twitter, revolution or of reform and rejection and injustice and corruption in support of the protesters. Sadir's bloc emerged from elections in October as the biggest parliamentary faction, but was still far short of a majority. Hence, deadlock still persists over the establishment of a new government in the region.
It's going to cost Americans more to borrow money. The U.S. Federal Reserve Board has raised its benchmark interest rate by 0.75% as it continues to battle against inflation. This is the second straight increase of 75 basis points and the fourth time U.S. central bankers have hiked rates in 2022. And there are indications of more increases this year. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell says despite the increases, the economy is chugging along quite well.
I do not think the U.S. is currently in a recession. And the reason is there are just too many areas of the economy that are performing, too well. And of course, I would point to the labor market in particular.
18-wheelers crowding the port are the clearest sign of brisk activity at the Port Newark Elizabeth Marine Terminals in northern New Jersey. The scene somewhat defies any talk of a U.S. economic slowdown. Last week, the Port of New York and New Jersey reported that its June 2022 volumes were the second highest in history. Expecting a moderation in activity later in 2022, partly due to inflation, Port Officer Michael Botsas says they are still predicting to be above 2021 total volumes.
It was the second highest month on record for the Port of New York and New Jersey, so volumes continue to be extremely strong. And just to put that in, some kind of context, year to date through June, again, we're up 10% over 2021, which was a record year for us. And again, if you go back pre-pandemic, our June volumes were about 860,000 20-foot equivalent units. That's 40% higher than year to date through June in 2019 before the pandemic.
Hundreds of protesters joined a march in Nigeria in hopes of ending a months-long strike that has closed the country's university. The strike by academic staff began 5 months ago. Since then, classrooms are empty and students' education has been put on hold. Ayuba Waba, president of the Nigeria Labour Congress, says there is no justification for keeping the universities closed for this long. He says the government should settle the contract dispute. Waba says the problem is not money, but what the politicians are spending it on. Emmanuel Osodeki, the academic staff union, says the strike is worth it if universities are improved despite the hardship it has caused.
If this strike can result in bringing our university to world standard, Nigerians should be happy that we have changed the system in such a way that these people will not be sending their children all over the world and bringing them back home. Our foreign students are coming here to teach and attend lectures, then we would have achieved our aim.
For many children in the African nation of Kenya, the only thing between them and death from starvation is a life-saving paste made out of peanuts. And now that nutrient-dense foodstuff may be harder to obtain. 3 years of drought have left Kenya and other African countries unable to produce much food. The war in Ukraine has made matters worse, driving up the cost of what little food is available, as well as the price of the peanut paste. UNICEF buys 80% of the world's supply of lifesaver paste. A small packet delivers 500 calories, along with essential vitamins and minerals. For children on the brink of death from starvation, this paste helps them recover and gain weight. UNICEF officials fear the rising prices may mean the organization will not be able to buy as much of the product. They say up to 600,000 children will miss out on this life-saving treatment.
At the peak of a heat wave, Germany's local officials were in haste to launch more evacuations as forest fires ravaged the east of the country. As a forest fire broke out Sunday on the Czech side of the border at the Bohemian Switzerland National Park, authorities immediately evacuated dozens of people. The fact that the cross-border park is home to rare species such as the Eurasian lynx and the peregrine falcon sparked concern regarding the extinction of the said species. When the widespread blaze reached the German border, authorities in the Elbe Estar area urgently moved out 700 people from the danger zone. Officials stated that the forest fire could last up to several days, and it was not clear yet when the fire would be brought under control. Around 350 people have been involved in fighting the blaze, which has spread to cover 850 hectares or 2,100 acres, has significantly increased, with scientists observing that heat waves around the world are becoming more often and extreme over time. U.S. Secretary of State The U.S. Secretary of State clarified that his talks with Lavrov will not be a negotiation about Ukraine, reasoning out that any negotiation regarding Ukraine is for its people and people to determine. However, Blinken warned of Kremlin's expanded goals in Ukraine.
As we look ahead, what the world has heard recently from Russia's leaders is raising new alarms. Last week, Foreign Minister Lavrov said that the Kremlin's goals in Ukraine had expanded. Now they seek to claim more of Ukrainian territory beyond the Donbass. This is the latest in a series of evolving justifications and ever-shifting goals. I think it's very important now that we see what Russia's next plan is. That is the annexation.
More than 30 penguins, all dead, are seen trapped in artisanal fishing nets on the shore of a beach in Maldonado, Uruguay. Richard Tesore, the director of SOS Rescate Fauna Marina, has warned of the finding. He says that since the beginning of the year, many dead animals have started to appear on these Uruguayan shores, from turtles to sea lions to cetaceans. And in the last 15 days, hundreds of penguins. Next on Mata ng Agila International, Buzz Aldrin's moon jacket sells for a sky-high $2.8 million. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this short break.
Ngayong linggo sa Cine Throwback.
Ano pangalan mo? Vic po. Vic po. Ano mo si Fernando po? Wala po. Sumunod ka sa akin ha, sa presinto ha. Jen, wala akong gasolina ito eh. Wala ba? Wala ho. Tulak mo na lang hanggang presinto. Meron pala ho. Alam ko, meron pa eh.
Nakadiscover siya na yung mga hinto ba, doon na lamang sa likod ng pansin niya nililimas. Naglulusutan pang gano'n sa nito eh.
Ngayong linggo, alas 12 ng tanghali. Dito lang sa Net 25.
Ito pong si Alin, nagnakaw dito sa resort.
Eh, wala ba sa inyong naka-witness?
Tama na muna nga.
Ayoko nga sumama kasi ako na naman ang magbibigay niyo ng gamit niyo.
Hindi na. Kasi ikaw na yung magsasagwan. Sira yung motor ng bangka. Bilis!
Ilalagay ko itong mga bolang ito dito sa beach. Tapos hahanapin ninyo.
Okay! Okay!
It has been said by many that chess is a peaceful game, even if its moves and strategies reflect the principles of warfare. Notwithstanding, a video shared on social media shows a boy making his own move only to have his finger grabbed by the robot. Take a look. According to Sergey Lavrov, Moscow Chess Federation president, the robot broke the child's finger, which is, of course, bad. Lavrov added that the machine had played many previous matches without incident. Vice President of the Russian Chess Federation, Sergey Smagin, explained the boy made a quick riposte instead of waiting for the machine to complete its move. 4 adults rushed to help the boy, who was eventually freed and was given immediate medical attention. TASS News Agency reported that the boy was able to finish the final days of the chess tournament in a cast.
Due to higher operating costs, Amazon is to raise the price of its Prime service for UK customers. From September, monthly subscriptions will go up £1 to £8.99 and annual membership will rise from £79 to £95. The company said its first price increase in the UK since 2014 was partly due to inflation, which is at a 40-year high. Other streaming services such as Netflix have also increased subscription prices, despite signs people are beginning to cut back on services. But Amazon Prime offers more than just its streaming service. It also provides unlimited deliveries of products. Amazon says the
battles a turbulent economy and the rising phenomenon of TikTok. CEO Mark Zuckerberg told analysts the firm reported a 36% drop in profit to $6.7 billion. Meta also said that revenue in the recently ended quarter ebbed to $28.8 billion, its first such slip since the firm, then known simply as Facebook, went public in 2012.
Stung by an across-the-board surge in inflation, McDonald's announced it was raising the UK price of its cheeseburger, set at a lowly 99 pence for 14 years. The 20% hike to 1.19 British pounds sees the U.S. fast food giant join a block of companies that pass on higher wholesale prices to British consumers, driving the country's worst cost of living crisis in generations. McDonald's said it was increasing the price of menu items impacted most by inflation by between 10 pence and 20 pence. UK and Chief Executive Officer Alistair McCrow said in a statement that the price hike is due to incredibly challenging business times.
After sealing a gold from annual men's multiple-stage bicycle race, Denmark's pride, Jonas Vingegaard, was welcomed by thousands of supporters on the street on his way home. A sea of people dressed in red, white and yellow showed their support as Vingegaard enjoyed an open-top parade wearing his famous yellow jersey. Vingegaard's win is believed to rank highly in the list of Denmark's best sporting moments. It is potentially even alongside the shock victory at Football's Euro 1992 and is probably the greatest thing that has ever happened in the history of Danish sport, according to 59-year-old Allan Olsen. Now, after a fantastic and mega moving parade, Vingegaard will later return for a celebratory ceremony in the Tivoli Gardens, the scene of the pre-tour presentation, which saw 35,000 Danish cycling fans give him a rousing reception. Now, it is deemed that celebrating Vingegaard's success brought the nation back together. In other sports news, four-time Formula One World champion Sebastian Vettel announced on Thursday that he will retire at the end of the 2022 season. Aston Martin team statement said that Vettel has spent a lot of time thinking about his decision to retire. Vettel said now that he's a father, he wants to spend more time with his family, adding that his retirement is not saying goodbye, but saying thank you to his fans. Vettel won 4 successive 53 Grand Prix victories, placed him third on the all-time list behind Lewis Hamilton, who had 103, and Michael Schumacher with 91. Vettel last won a race in Singapore in 2019. The German made his F1 debut with BMW Sauber and United States Grand Prix in 2007. He joined Toro Rosso that same year and raced the final 7 races of the season.
The English squad is ready to write history after it thrashed Sweden to reach the final of the UEFA Women's Euro 2022. In the UK, Jericho Danielle Season reports.
England will play a final of the European Championships on home soil at Wembley for the second time in little over a year, after winning the semi-final against Sweden 4-0. But the success of the country's women has the opportunity to leave a lasting legacy. The Lionesses will hope to go one step further when they face Germany on Sunday than the Three Lions did in losing the final of the Men's Euro 2020 to Italy due to penalties last summer. UEFA said on Tuesday that television viewing figures went up 58% on the previous Women's Euro in 2017, with 152 million interactions on social media for the group stage alone. The professional game in England has gradually been growing for some time, even if they are not yet to win a major women's tournament. Former Arsenal and England striker Ian Wright told the BBC, "If there's no legacy to this, like with the 2012 Olympics, then what are we doing, as this is as proud as I've ever felt of any England side." He called on the authorities to ensure the goodwill gathering around the Lionesses is harnessed into change for young girls playing the game. A record crowd of 87,000 for the Women's Euro is expected at a sold-out Wembley on Sunday to round off the tournament that has set the bar at an all-time high for women's game on and off the field. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, this is Jericho Season for Montana Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
House of the Dragon creators and stars were eager to leave behind the difficult final season of Game of Thrones as they launched its prequel at a glittering world premiere in Los Angeles. The original Thrones, with its unique blend of fantasy, violence, medieval politics, and dragons, became a global phenomenon that hooked audiences and swept television awards. But its finale was panned by fans and critics. According to Miguel Sapochnik, the director of several much-loved Thrones episodes, fans will get the chance to have a different experience with a prequel. Reviews and plot details of the first episode of House of the Dragon, out August 21, are under embargo, but its screening drew a glowing reception at the recently opened Academy Museum in Los Angeles. Set years earlier in the same universe of George R.R. Martin's fantasy books, House of the Dragon depicts the glory days of the ancestors of popular Thrones characters, such as Daenerys Targaryen. Paddy Considine plays the kindly King Viserys, while Matt Smith is cast as his ambitious brother, Prince Daemon. Millie Alcock and Emma Darcy play younger and older versions of the king's only child, Princess Rhaenyra, with the show's timeline spanning at least a decade. Olivia Cook, who plays a key role as Rhaenyra's best friend, Alicent Hightower, said it was scary to dwell on how the original series ending had been received or its impact on its successor.
The space jacket worn by Buzz Aldrin while flying to the moon has sold at a New York auction for a heart-stopping $2.8 million or 155.7 million pesos. Take a look. Decked with a U.S. flag and NASA logo, the white in-flight jacket was worn by Aldrin while speeding through space in Apollo 11's Command Module Columbia. Aldrin spent the majority of the 6-day journey in space wearing the jacket, changing out of it only midway through to swap into a pressure suit for stepping onto the moon itself. The Teflon-coated white jacket is manufactured out of a fire-resistant material known as beta cloth. It is the only piece of clothing from the 1969 space mission ever to have been sold. And it is one of 69 personal belongings that the 92-year-old Aldrin has decided to put up for sale. Bidding for the item lasted for almost 10 minutes before it went to an unidentified bidder over the phone. The jacket was sold by Sotheby's, becoming the most valuable American space artifact ever sold at auction.
Now let's explore the past with today's historical facts. In 1963, delegates of the Boy Scouts of the Philippines to the 11th World Scout Jamboree died in a plane crash. The ill-fated United Arab Airlines Flight 869 carried 52 passengers. Among them were 24 Filipino Boy Scouts and Scout officials. Aviation authorities were not able to ascertain the cause of the accident. In mourning, flags at the Jamboree in Greece were placed at half-mast. In 1976, the Chinese industrial city of Tangshan was flattened by a catastrophic magnitude 7.8 earthquake. The death toll was officially reported as 242,000 people, but it may have been as high as 655,000. Most of the fatalities resulted from the collapse of unreinforced masonry homes, coupled with the fact that people were sleeping when the quake struck at 3:42 a.m. And in 1951, Walt Disney's Alice in Wonderland premiered in New York City. The animated musical film is based on the Alice books by Lewis Carroll and features the voice of Catherine Beaumont as Alice. The film received generally negative reviews on its initial release, but the reception on its 1974 re-release was positive, leading to subsequent re-releases, merchandising, and home video releases.
And following that, we end tonight's broadcast is a quote from the Cheshire Cat, a major character in Alice in Wonderland. Every adventure requires a first step. You got to start somewhere. And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I'm CJ Hero.
And I'm Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.